And a lot of that comes from trauma, comes from horror stories.
Yeah. Y'all know what time it is, man. We represent to go on this one. Yeah.
And so I get a lot of frequently asked questions. And one of the questions when people come visit me here is why I don't Airbnb my apartment. Now, don't get me wrong, I've let my friends crash at my place. I think Darius has stayed there several times. I got a lot of boys that come in town, no problem, leave the keys with the doorman, the porteria, and then they get to come in town. But as far as Airbnb, we're talking about strangers living in my place. For me, it's not high on my priority list. The money isn't worth the headaches that it may cause. And a lot of that comes from trauma, comes from horror stories. So if you've ever seen my apartment, it's 3 bedrooms, fully furnished, and I have a guest bedroom, a couple futons, couch, no sé qué, beautiful area. Now, when I started this journey 10 years ago to live abroad, I started in Honduras. I was staying in a pretty nice townhouse. Then I moved to the Dominican Republic and things kind of went downhill. Now, I love the country, and I have to be very specific. I love the country, but my housing situation was complicated. I was staying in this old building on the 6th or 7th floor. The elevator didn't work, which is just amazing. Anytime you're bringing a date home and the elevator is out and they got to walk up 6 flights of stairs with heels on is not the way you want to start off a romantic evening. And I had carpet. If I can find footage, I'm gonna B-roll it. I had a carpet in my kitchen. Okay, it was a horrible situation. And the only shower in the place that was accessible, you had to go through my bedroom to get to it. So if you go inside the place, it looked like they split a townhouse and made it into 2 separate apartments, and I had the upper part. You walk 6 flights of stairs, and then you have to go up another flight to get to my place, and it was 2 bedrooms. All right, cool. So what happens? Well, money was a little tight, so I decided to go on Airbnb and rent out one of my rooms. First person that stayed there, things went fine. It was a young lady. I helped her get groceries. I made her feel comfortable. Now, it's awkward. I have to tell her, hey, the only way you can shower is going through my bedroom. But what I would do in those moments is just step out for a little bit. Hey, I'm going to go take a walk. I'll be back in a half hour. She's able to shower, get her things, no problem. Then a couple Venezuelan guys stayed with me. And they were I think, newspaper writers. They were escaping Venezuela at the time because we're talking about 2015 when things were getting a little edgy there. And this is when I realized that Dominicans would rip anybody off. Those guys, even though they were Latino, spoke fluent Spanish, they were overpaying for taxis in Santo Domingo. And I didn't know this until one day I went downstairs with them and I heard the taxi guys ripping them off. Moving forward, I get a guy who signs up for 6 weeks. All right, now 6 weeks sounds good from a money standpoint. The place I was renting out was super cheap. I think I was renting it out for $15 a night. So you can do the math. 6 weeks, I needed the money. I'll go ahead and approve the guy. Now, this guy was from Kenya. This is not to speak badly of Kenyans, because I know a bunch of Kenyans that are great people. Born, raised in Kenya, but had been living in the United States for the last 20 years. And I think he lived in California, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if I'm allowed to say his name on this channel, but let's say the name rhymes with one of the names from Lion King. Okay. His name was Mufasa. I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember. So this was the first thing that threw me off. We're talking. This is prior to him arriving. He tells me he's around about my age. Now, at the time, I'm 33 years old. I'm under the impression he's 35, 40 years old, maybe. He shows up. It's the old dude, okay? He shows up. He's an old dude. He put his passport on the couch. Of course, I had to look at it because I can tell a 30-year-old when I see one. And I'm like, this guy is definitely older than me. He was born in the 60s sometime. So I'm like, why would a man lie about their age? That's just a weird thing to do from man to man, to lie about your age. So that was the first thing. The second thing is that first day he comes in, I do like I would do any guest. I take him to the grocery store. There's a grocery store called La Sirena, which is right down the street from where I lived. It was right there off of, what street was that? I can't think of it right now. Churchill. There they call it La Chuchi. I don't know how they got La Chuchi out of Churchill, but that's how they pronounce it in the Dominican Republic. So I take him to the store. We're walking around the store, and I figured, hey, he's here shopping. Let me grab a couple of items. So I grabbed some white rice. He stops me. He says, hey, why are you buying white rice? I look at him because I want to. He's like, you should get brown rice. I'm like, why? He's like, oh, because it's healthier. So I'm very well aware of that. I've purchased brown rice before. It's disgusting. I'm not going to eat it. Oh, man, when you know better, you should do better. Now, I'm just going to put this out here. I was in way better shape than him. So I'm looking at him physically like, okay, I don't think you can really make comments about what I'm eating. And he makes this, I'm like, look, dude, the macronutrients are pretty much the same. The micronutrients are pretty much the same. Brown rice just has a little bit more fiber. So he goes to tell me like, oh, I don't believe any of that stuff. You can't believe any of those labels. So again, I ignore him. So, you just got to come into a situation where you're like, okay, this person has got their own version of reality. I'm just going to act like he didn't just say that to me. So then he proceeds to buy potato chips and tuna fish after lecturing me about white rice. So I was like, okay. So before he purchases this, he runs to the line. They have a Western Union inside the store. And he goes and exchanges $20 into Dominican pesos. Now, if anybody's ever exchanged money before, the minimum you would ever want to physically exchange is like $100. Why would they charge you a fee? You got to make a line. It's just a whole process. And so I'm like, that's just weird. Like, why would you exchange over $20? All right, cool. Go back to the apartment, first night, everything is fine. I wake up in the morning, I'm getting dressed. I was a social studies teacher at a school in the Dominican Republic. 6 a.m., this dude wakes up to talk to me about white supremacy. Corners me. I'm trying to have my morning coffee, and he corners me. He's like, hey, I'm disgusted. I see all these beautiful black Caribbean women, Haitian women, Dominican women with these old, decrepit white males, and I'm just like, oh, I got one of those. So, I don't want to talk about Hotep people. I think people, they travel abroad for different reasons, but at that point I realized, okay, this guy is a little off, and I just didn't engage. One thing, a wise man said, don't argue with fools. So I didn't engage with him at that point. Let's fast forward. So the next weekend, he goes to Santiago. Now, Santiago is the place that supposedly has the most beautiful women in the Dominican Republic. Now, take that in consideration. It's like Colombia. There's really no places where the women aren't beautiful, but that's the stereotypical place that people go to. And he has a great time. He comes back. He's super charged. He's super energetic. And he's extremely happy about his trip. He's like, dude, we got to go. Now, mind you, at that point, I'd been there for a few months, but I'd never been to Santiago. So like, all right, cool. Next weekend when I'm off of work, we can go to Santiago together so we can get to know the city. We take a bus to Santiago, and it's my first time there. I don't know the place. We walk around for like an hour, and he's like, hey, let me take you to this spot. So we go to this place where these two beautiful young ladies, they're selling Herbalife. Now, if you've ever been approached by people selling Herbalife, it's like supplements, and they're trying to encourage weight loss. And these two girls, these two sisters, they actually had an incredible story. They were both overweight, and they lost like 100 pounds each. And now they're using that as testimony to sell Herbalife. So this is how legend goes. He was with them the prior time he was there. He met them there. Now you have to take in consideration, they're trying to sell him a product. So of course, they're being nice to him. Of course, they're being friendly with him on that trip. And so he took that as if they liked him. But his Spanish was okay, but it wasn't great. So he takes me there. I meet them. They're trying to sell me Herbalife. I'm not interested. Now at the time, I'm in my early 30s. I have a six-pack. I'm in pretty good physical condition. So I'm trying to explain to them like, no, I'm not trying to buy what you're selling me. But I'm conversing with them. So he does this weird thing. He sees them engaging with me. He puts his headphones on, and he just goes and sits in the corner. Now the space was pretty large. So I'm sitting on the couch. The lady, she has me doing like this body fat thing, and it tries to tell me that I have 27% body fat. Mind you, at the time I have a six-pack. The most I could have had was 12%. So I pull up my shirt to show her, where do I have 27% body fat? I'm not trying to show off. I was just trying to make the argument. He sees that, he's like, shrugs it off. Okay, cool. So some dude that was in there, he asked me like, hey dude, how did you get abs like that? So he walks up to me, he asked me this. So I started showing him some ab workouts inside of this Herbalife place. Mind you, we've been there like an hour, and Mustafa, not sure what his name is, hasn't said anything. I think it's Mufasa. He hasn't said anything the whole time we've been there. And so it's just awkward. So the girls are like, hey, we're gonna shut down shop for a second and go grab lunch. So I go up to him like, hey, you wanna go grab lunch with the girls? He's like, oh, okay. So we started walking across the street to this mall where they have a food center and they have a food court. And he just looks at me in Spanish and just yells, celoso. Wait, what? He's like, oh man, I just hate these African Americans that's just super arrogant and just think they think they the ish. So I'm like, you talking to me? Are you talking about me? Are you talking to me? It was just an awkward interaction. So we go to the food court. It's like a buffet style. The girls, they get their things. We go up there. It's time to pay. He's like, oh, you got it, big baller. I know you got it. I'm like, no, these ladies work. They have a job. They're going to pay for their own meal. We're talking like $3 a plate. They pay for their own food. We all sit down. So how's the placement? All right, I got one sister in front of me, another sister to the right of me, and Mufasa is sitting here to the left. He has his headphones in still. So we're sitting down eating. He has his headphones in. He's not communicating with anyone. And now at this point, both of the sisters are messaging me on WhatsApp like, what's wrong with your friend? And so they're like, what's wrong with your friend? Why is he not talking? He wasn't like this last time. And I messaged them back like, this is not my friend. He's just staying with me via Airbnb. So now they're terrified for me because this guy is obviously slightly off. He's a little crazy. And I'm trying to explain to them, don't worry, you guys don't know, I'm from Rockville, Illinois. I'm the most dangerous person here right now. No te preocupes. I'm not worried about this guy, okay? So he's being weird. And then in the middle of our conversation, I'm talking to both sisters. We're speaking in Spanish. He just starts yelling out, I don't know if this is correct grammatical term, superlatives at one of the girls. Linda, hermosa, bonita, bella, guapa. The girl looks at him and she looks mortified. And she's like, what am I supposed to do with that information? Okay, so he's yelling out all these different superlatives at her. And she's like, okay. And then he asked her if she wanted to go to the movies later. And she told him, I don't like movies. No me gusta el cine. Who says that? Who doesn't like the movies? So obviously she doesn't want to go to the movies with him. So eventually we leave the place. We say goodbye to the girls. They're writing me like, hey, make sure you're okay. And we get back to the apartment. And I really don't hear anything else about those girls or about Santiago again. So that was the first part. So second part is, and this is where I would say, I don't know, there's a lot of places where it gets weird. Now, mind you, he's staying with me for 6 weeks. Now, at any point in time, I can call Airbnb or I can contact them and tell them, like, look, this guy is hostile, he's out of control. But at the same time, I don't want to pay the money back. I don't even know if I have enough money to give him the money back. And I need someone staying there. So he tells me he wants to get to know a different side of town. Even though my apartment was crappy, I stayed on the nicer side of town. I'm like, okay, I can take you to Mega Centro. It's in Santo Domingo Este. And I stayed there before when I was on a visit. It's close to Sabana Perdida, Lomina. It's the hood, un barrio popular. So I take him to Mega Centro. We get into the Mega Centro, and this is when the iPhone, if I'm not mistaken, 5 had just come out. So it's like the iPhone 5, iPhone 6. He's like, oh, I'm gonna buy the iPhone. I'm like, dude, you don't want to buy an iPhone in Latin America. It's going to be like double the price. And oh, no, I got it. So we go into the store. He doesn't speak Spanish that well. He tries to order it. He asks the guy to bring it from the back. The guy pulls it out, shows it to him. He's like, all right, cool, ring it up. The guy rings it up, give him the amount in pesos. He's like, all right, cool. He looks at me. How much is that? Like, dude, that's like 2,000 USD. Like, oh, I don't want it. He just wasted this guy's time. I mean, we've been there like, probably 15, 20 minutes. And obviously he had no intentions on buying this iPhone, which was completely unnecessary. So at the same time, I called a friend of mine who lived in that side of town. She's a model. Shout out to Ruth. I mean, just gorgeous. She's probably 5'10", just amazingly gorgeous young lady. She comes and meets us at the mall. He sees her, does the same thing he did to the one girl, just starts yelling out superlatives at her. Linda, hermosa, guapa, bella. And she's like, who's this creep? And at the same time, he was like, ¿Tú quieres zapatos? He asked her if she wanted shoes. ¿Tú quieres perfume? She's like, no, no, no. He just starts offering to buy her things. And she's like, no. She finally settles and lets him buy her a Pepsi, okay, while we're in the food court. So that was a little awkward. Okay, cool. Now I remember one time prior, my boy Ron Story was in town. Ruth's mother had made us an authentic Dominican meal. So I asked her, I'm like, hey, on Sunday, can we come to your mother's house and can she make us an authentic Dominican meal? Because he's tired of going to the restaurants. And she's like, yeah, no problem. Sunday rolls around and she hits me up like, yo, my mom went out of town. I don't feel comfortable with people coming over to my place and she's gone. Cool, no problem. She's like, but I can go over there. It's on the other side of earth. It's like, I can go over there and make the meal. All right, cool, no problem. We can make that happen. So I agree with him. Like, look, she's coming over to make this meal for us, but it's really for you because I live here. I've had the food 1,000 times. We can split the taxi fare because it's like $20 each way and split the groceries. Cool. That was the agreement. She shows up, we go to La Sirena again. He just wants everything he's ever heard of that's Dominican food. Like he wants mangú, he wants mofongo, he wants, maybe mofongo is Colombian, but I think it's Dominican. All right. Everything that you can think of, from fish to meat to everything. And he does that thing again. We get in line. He hands me like what's equivalent to $10, and we have about $50 worth of food. And he runs to Western Union to go exchange $20 again. So I'm in line waiting for him to get there, but the food is already rung up, so I pay the difference. We haven't split 50-50 at this point. He didn't pay for the taxi at this point. We get back to my place. So we're back at my place. She's cooking. She got everything going. And she realizes that I'm missing something that most Dominican households already have. It's that it's like a wooden bowl with the palito that they use to mash things up, right? And I didn't have it because I'm not Dominican. I don't do those type of culinary delicacies. So she asked me like, hey, could you run to the store real quick to go grab it? I'm like, sure, no problem. So I grabbed my keys. I started heading towards the door, and she grabbed my arm like this, took her nails, dug into my arm, and she looked at me in the eyes, says, there's no way you're leaving me here with him by myself. No puedes dejarme aquí solo con él. Sola con él. I'm like, oh, okay. Hey, Mufasa, can you run to the store with me real quick? So we go back to the store, find the little thing. It's like $2. We bring it back. She makes this huge feast. The food is delicious. And he doesn't finish his plate. Like he eats like a little bit of everything and then just kind of like throws it off to the side. And then when it was time, she washes up, she cleans dishes. When it was time for her to leave, he was supposed to take care of the taxi ride back. He leaves out and just disappears. He just purposely disappears, and I don't see him for like 2 hours. So eventually she has to go back home, so I pay for the taxi cab for her to go back home. So mind you, he's paying for the room, but I just spent, close to $50, maybe $60 on her coming and going and the groceries, no sé qué. So I need my half of the money back for it. And it took him like another 2 weeks to pay me back that amount. And that was just one of them things, man, I was like, man, this is completely and utterly avoidable situation. What I started doing was tutoring on the side. I was tutoring for microeconomics to make money and just doing side hustles because I'm like, I'm never renting out an Airbnb again. Now, luckily, Ron Story came and stayed with me and helped me out financially. Thanks, Ron. Big up to Ron. That's my boy. Because he ended up paying just half the rent, and that was very helpful because I was actually down and out. I was broke back then. But another quick story. So I take Mufasa out with some of my homeboys. We go to this restaurant. It's like a restaurant/car wash. And the women are just walking around are just gorgeous. They're devastating. And it's time to pay the bill. And we realize that Mufasa has a bag full of change. Very random thing to just walk around with. Just a bag full of coins. Dominican coins. So we put our bills into the little billfold, the little portfolio thing. And he throws his change on there. It's like $10 worth of change he puts in there. And then tries to fold it over. And when the lady came to pick it up off the table, change just spilled everywhere. It was just like, it just started spilling. She was pissed. And, me and my boy Mike, we just look away. We like, man, it wasn't me. and you could tell like who was the responsible party for it. So he looked embarrassed, kind of looked away. And then we paid the tip in cash, but we put it on the table. So when she comes back, he tries to give her the tip like it was his money. He didn't put in on the tip. It was just random stuff like that. And I just determined at that point that no, I don't want to do Airbnb again because you run into some weird people. So then a couple years later, I'm living in Colombia. Guess who hits me up? It's Mufasa asking could he crash at my spot in Colombia, and I told him you surely cannot. At that point, my boy Darius was staying with me in Medellin, but there's no way. I couldn't even be broke enough to let him stay with me again. And I was like, dude, why don't you just get Airbnb? Like, no, I don't like using them. What I found out is he actually had been kicked off the platform for being considered a hostile person. So it wasn't just my experience with him. What's the moral of the story? I'm not saying don't use Airbnb. I'm not saying it's not profitable. When thinking about your own space, be careful about who you let in your own space, because it's one thing to have Airbnb in a spot that you don't live in, but when you're sharing the space with someone else, peace of mind is better off than having a little bit of money. And yeah, I don't even let all my friends stay at my spot. Some of them can, but other people I tell them, hey, the Dan Carlton has a really nice space. It's really affordable. And you just learn that when you give people things for free, especially, sometimes they don't appreciate it. When you give things away for cheap, people don't appreciate it. And some things don't have a price tag on them.
Yeah.